Bobbi-Jo Molokken, and I am one of the counselors here in Luther's College Counseling Service. And today we are going to run through some suggestions and strategies on using your resiliency with coping strategies during a pandemic. I want to give a special shout out to Larry Long from the University of Kansas Medical Center for sharing some of the information and pieces of this template in this workshop with us. Some things that are common psychological reactions while students may be experiencing while they're going through this pandemic may include things like fear and anxiety. This could mean feeling anxious or worried about yourself or family members contracting the virus or worrying about spreading it to other people. Could be concerns about obtaining food or other personal supplies. General anxiety about your future. This could mean future opportunities while you're still in college, job opportunities outside of that, how the world may look overall. Depression and boredom are a couple of other things that we may notice that are happening for some folks. This can include feeling sad or having a low mood. Having large periods of time spent at home can cause some feelings of loneliness or boredom. People may notice that they're feeling angry, frustrated, or irritable. Sometimes while physically distancing, we may feel that some of our personal freedom is lost. We may feel some anger, resentments towards people who have issued physical distancing orders or you've been exposed to the virus. We may have some uncertainty about how long we're going to be in this situation and just general uncertainty about the future. For many of us, sitting with that uncertainty is really, really challenging. We may experience some grief and loss. It could be the loss of our semester or the semester that we had pictured in the first place, and experiences that come along with that. We might be grieving the changes in our relationships. So since some people have experienced online learning or even just staying at home more often, we may not be seeing those friends in the same way. And so some people are kind of grieving the changes in those relationships. For folks who have experienced trauma, having things be really out of our control can be an activator for our past trauma. Sometimes people might be in environments where they may not feel safe or supported, and that can bring up trauma as well. And then just having general increased anxiety can also increase traumatic memories for folks. One thing we also see is that many people are experiencing emotional overwhelm. So when we're having many emotions at once, sometimes they might even seem like they're opposites, that I can be holding sadness and gratefulness, or I can be holding anxiety and also some sense of calm all at the same time. And so that can make us feel overwhelmed. And then once we're in that place, we might have difficulty with things like making decisions, being motivated, focusing, initiating tasks, all of which are things that are really helpful when we're trying to do schoolwork. And so I think it's just important that we understand that all of these reactions and more are normal, and you may relate to some of those or not to others. While we are social distancing, it's important that we think about that's not social isolation. So there's ways to be social that maybe don't include physical contact or being close with people. And so we really should be using the word physical distancing rather than social distancing. So how does this all connect back with our resilience? So here are some general parts of what makes up a resilient person. So you see things like goal setting, self-esteem, learning from mistakes, self-control, being able to overcome difficulties rather than avoid them, optimistic thinking patterns, recognizing your own and others' emotions, willing to seek out help. So being able to do all of these things is going to help us to be more resilient in a difficult time like this. And so for today, we're going to focus specifically on some different coping strategies that can kind of help us with primarily that physical distancing part and just kind of getting through this pandemic overall. So one thing is kind of controlling the things that we can control. So we mentioned before that being out of control can make people feel really overwhelmed or anxious. What we can try to control is some of our media intake. And so we can also try to work on challenging the thoughts that come up. So if you know there are certain things that trigger your worries, then I would challenge you to think about, can some of those be avoided? And sometimes this is external things. So it could be news, emails, messages, texts, calls. So which of those kind of things might be challenging for you? And is there ways for you to put some things in place? Maybe it's limiting if video calls make you really anxious. Maybe it's seeing if it's acceptable for you to turn your screen off for parts of it or all of it. Maybe it's communicating via phone if you feel more comfortable with that than video chats, and being willing to state that. It might be that I only check my email a couple times a day. Or maybe one of the things I might want to look at is internally, what thoughts lead to more worry and how can I work on building some skills. I'll also be doing a session like this on challenging your thoughts, which might be really helpful for people who know they have a lot of internal thought processes that are challenging for them. Pick only 1 or 2 reliable information sources that you check, and don't be looking at that more than once or twice a day, or less if you need it. The CDC and the WHO may be specific places to look at getting news, or if you're more concerned about local trends, your local Department of Public Health. When possible, you might want to set boundaries with friends and family and important other people about the amount of time that we spend discussing the pandemic. So some of us, it's not part of our daily conversations, but for other people, they may have families that very much pay attention and follow those trends. And so if that's something that's bothersome to you, you may want to be able to work on setting some boundaries with that. Also, just watching your time on social media, since there's lots and lots of posts about it. If you are somebody who struggles with communicating boundaries, these are some different suggestions. Maybe somebody asks you to go out and do something and you're still really trying to practice physical distancing. So just being comfortable saying that. It could be asking people to wash their hands when they come into your home. It could be just saying, I'm not looking to have this conversation right now. I respect your thoughts on it. Letting people know that it's making you more anxious. I appreciate you trying to help me by staying positive, but I need to process my emotions right now. If somebody's exhibiting symptoms of being sick, it may mean setting a boundary to say, I really need for you to self-quarantine if you're feeling sick. Please don't come near me. I just need to protect myself. It's nothing personal. It could be saying, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I don't want to get any more information on this subject right now. If somebody's trying to send you articles or engage with you about that. So one way that can be helpful is to keep our brain activated through meaningful activity. When we're not doing enriching activities, we are more susceptible to depression, anxiety. And so thinking about activities that fit with your values are really important. So family is important to you. Maybe it's figuring out ways to engage with your family. Again, from a distance, that might mean sending videos, sending letters, calls, sending little gifts in the mail if that's an option. Creating concrete structured schedule that you can follow throughout the day. So having a schedule just like you would if you were regularly on campus, it can be helpful for a lot of people. Many folks find that using a planner or a Google Calendar or something where they have a kind of a regular schedule to look forward to and follow is helpful for them versus just kind of sitting around and doing things as you feel like it, because often the tasks that we need to do in the day, we might not feel motivated for, pandemic or not. Exercising daily can be really good, even though this can be hard. At times, there's ways to exercise outside in different places if you feel like you want to do that, as well as just making sure that you're practicing really good sleep hygiene. So we know that making sure that we sleep well is always a huge part of both our overall health as well as just our mental health. And so you can always come back to this looking at the PowerPoint and then click on some of these links if you want more information about some of these specific things. There's lots of ways for us to be social from a distance. So this can mean setting up regular days or times for social dates with friends, using whatever platform you feel comfortable with, just as if you and your friends would have got together on Friday nights when you were all in the same place. You can still do that, and there's lots of creative things that you can do during that time. Here's just a few ideas, and of course, all of you are creative and probably have even better ones than this. You could do a photo scavenger hunt or charades. You can host a Netflix party where you all watch at the same time. You could have an online karaoke party. You can play some social games on your phone. You could start a book club. where you just do that virtually instead of in the same space. You can engage in different kinds of team building activities. There's also some different games that I've seen that you can adjust to doing online. So lots of fun ideas if you do some searches and find some things that might work for you. As we said before, exercising, take your dog if you have one, or just yourself out on a walk. Maybe your dogs will get sick of that over time. Being outside can be really important. Obviously, if you're feeling uncomfortable being around others, you may choose to wear a mask or may choose to go to places that are less busy. But it doesn't mean that you can't go outside, even if it's just going and sitting outside for a while, if that's on your, right outside of your house. Otherwise, finding different ways to be in nature, hiking, walks, other kinds of things that might be helpful for you. Maybe setting specific times where you're going to walk, just going outside and practicing breathing and mindfulness. So as you're walking, you can do a grounding exercise. One example of that, if you're not familiar, is naming 5 things that you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things that you smell, 1 thing that you taste. The numbers aren't so important with that, but you can run through all of your 5 senses and try to notice all of them while you're out in nature. Even sometimes just opening the window and getting some fresh air can be really good for us. We want to also make sure that we are eating mindfully and deliberately. And so changes in routine can cause stress, and for some people that leads to mindless eating. We want to also make sure that we're not forgetting to eat. So having that schedule can be helpful, and making eating part of that regular schedule. Making meals can be something that for some people can be very enjoyable in a time like this. Try to challenge yourself to make a meal from scratch. There's some cool apps, like one called Supercook that's free, that you can put all the ingredients in your home in there, and it will tell you recipes that you can make based on the ingredients that you have. So that can be really helpful if you're wanting to cook something but don't want to have to run to the store frequently right now. Also trying to just eat slowly and turning screens off so that you are actually sitting down and dining. Eating mindfully looks like tasting your food, savoring it, noticing textures to it, chewing slowly, putting away things if you're with others, engaging in conversation, sometimes putting our fork or spoon down between bites. Those are all some different things that we can do to make sure that we are eating mindfully. Some people might find that this is a good time that they want to explore new things and learn in different ways. Again, kind of challenging that brain and giving that brain something new and different. So here's some different ideas. There's virtual museum tours, virtual live concerts that have been happening. There's some free classes from some Ivy League schools that you can do just for fun. You can work on learning a language with various apps and websites. There's some Broadway shows that you can stream online. You can look at different zoo websites and see and look at different things there. Don't feel, though, that during this time that you have to be engaging in some new big thing, right? So some people feel overwhelmed by the concept of I must be using this time wisely, or I must learn some new skill, or I'm not doing it right. Ultimately, you have to do what is best for you. And so sometimes that's just getting through the day. And we may not have the bandwidth to be expanding our horizons. So know that these are just some ideas of things that are helpful for some people if they're looking for that. But we don't have to be doing something, terribly new and exciting. Sometimes just being able to stick with some of those basics like exercise, schedule, sleep, eating mindfully might be the best that we can do to get through the day right now, and that's totally okay. If you want some additional resources about coping, there are some links. All Luther students and employees have access to what's called Therapy Assistance Online, TAO, and so you can use that. It's a self-led program with lots of different modules and pathways that will take you through things with managing your anxiety. There's a mindfulness library in there if you want to work on practicing some mindfulness. Active Minds has a whole site about coronavirus and some stuff from the CDC. and others about different ways to kind of cope with this pandemic. For folks who might be looking for community mental health providers, you may want to look first with your insurance company to see what your list of covered providers is, and they might be able to provide a list for you, and you can start there. If you're interested in finding a psychologist, some people, if they want to get a thorough evaluation, may go to a psychologist, and many psychologists also do therapy as well. There's a website to help locate that. Then there's a Find a Therapist through the Psychology Today website. That's not an all-inclusive list, but it's a great place to start. And then if you're looking for a psychiatrist, that would be somebody who can potentially prescribe medications for mental health related issues. Then you can check on that link there. And if students are interested in receiving some assistance in finding a provider, they can email counseling@luther.edu. They can also check with us if we are during the semester about what services our office may or may not be able to help with them. At the very least, we can provide everybody with some consultations about what services that they can get depending on the area that they live in, and whether our office has any services that might be able to provide for them in various ways. If you are interested in this and this was helpful, then I encourage you to check out the 2 other presentations in this series, one about challenging your thoughts and another about self-compassion. Thank you, and I hope that you are doing as well as you can right now.